Yes, welcome into Sportsbook. Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy Thursday, April 6th. Big game breakdown, a big one in the association. Bucks and Pacers. Matt Harvey's back. The Braves and the Mets. And Rob Veno, second part of the bullpen breakdown coming up, and the play of the day. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. A bad beat? Yes, in golf. Can you believe it? Dustin Johnson gets hurt falling down the stairs at the home he's renting at Augusta. LV Superbook on Twitter, there were more bets and more money on Dustin Johnson to win the Masters than any other golfer at multiple Las Vegas books. The LV Superbook, one of them. They've adjusted his odds to 7-1 as we tape this early Thursday morning. He's in the last group to tee off. Who knows if he even plays?
Yeah, and for a guy who's the chalk, again, there's been nothing but Dustin Johnson money here in Vegas, and not just at Westgate, all over town. Dustin Johnson, the hottest golfer in Las Vegas. And to see him, I mean, what's the story now? He fell down a flight of stairs? Yeah, whatever the story is, that's a tough beat if you have Johnson money in your pocket.
Oh, I don't know if I'm buying that story. Something stinks. Also in 2012, he hurt his back lifting a jet ski. Who knows? Dan Jenkins had a great tweet. I just hope Pauline is okay. Yeah, amen, brother. Bad beat, bad for the books. Indians. Where they close the favorite on the road. They sweep Texas. Lindor with the granny as the Rangers bullpen blows it.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, what a dramatic granny. We're talking about a 6-4 lead in the ninth inning. The Rangers bullpen walks in one run, so it's 6-5. Lindor at the plate goes, boom, see you later. Statement win, and we don't say this a lot in April. This is a statement series for Cleveland, going to Texas and sweeping the Rangers, and the Texas bullpen takes their second loss of the season already.
Yep, that is a great job by the Indians. Bad beat. Pirates on the run line, plus the run and a half. Red Sox held scoreless into the 12th. They were the home team. You're supposed to cash that ticket. Walk the 7-hitter, walk the 8-hitter. Sandy Leone with the 3-run bomb. Oh, no.
Yeah, Antonio Bastardo came into the 12th, and it wasn't, but he's got one out in the bottom of the 12th, sailing along. But the one thing when you have a lineup like the Red Sox, can't be walking the 7-hitter and walking the 8-hitter and giving up dingers to the 9-hitter. Yeah, tough beat if you had the Rangers, tough beat if you had the Pirates on the run line last night.
This didn't make any sense. Bad bets. Huge move on Miami-Charlotte under. 207 down to 203.5, Teddy. Miami bombs away from 3.
Yeah, it fell 211, and Charlotte's been playing Charlotte's been over City for weeks. I was shocked by this move. I mean, maybe bettors were expecting a playoff-type flow, with Charlotte in last gas mode. But, I mean, the Heat were raining threes, 21 of 40 from beyond the arc. James Johnson scoring 26 points in under 30 minutes, knocking down 6 of 7 from beyond the arc.
I think it's 9 in a row or 9 to 10, something like that with these Charlotte overs. It's been wild lately.
9. Against the closer, it's 9 straight.
9 straight? All right, very good. Excellent. Bad bet. Wow. Once the Thompson injury came out, Celtics bet up from 3 to 4.5. The total went from 218.5 to 222. They were expecting a wide open game without Thompson. This was over in the second quarter. Cavs thump them.
Yeah, the Cavs thumped them, and that over money, no good. LeBron set the tone, and that's the thing about Cleveland. Cleveland's offensive explosions are second to none in the NBA. Maybe the Warriors can match them. Maybe Houston can. So there are teams that can match them. But in terms of the ability to just, you blink and all of a sudden they scored 10 points. And the entire second quarter was like that for Cleveland. Of course, Celtics never had a chance in the ballgame. LeBron 36, 10, and 6. And Lou still had him out there for 38 minutes when the game was never in doubt in the second half. We've been talking about this all season, and it continues to be an issue for Cleveland. But bottom line, Celtics were a bad bet, and the over was a bad bet last night.
There's another one. Spurs better from 10.5 to 13.5 at home against the Lakers. What are the Lakers doing? For the third time in a week and a half, they go out and win a game when they're trying to tank and get a top 3 pick. Remember, if it's outside of the top 3, they lose it to Philly, and they also have to give up a first-round pick to Orlando in 2019. There is now a 53% chance they lose their pick.
Yeah, well, but we got to talk some conspiracy theory. I mean, this is America in 2017, Pauly. The Lake Show don't seem too worried about sending their top 3 protected pick to Philly. They're confident they'll land in the top 3. What do you think? You think the Lakers are going to get that top 3 pick? I say they do, and I don't care how it happens. I say the Lakers get that top 3 pick, maybe even number 1.
Well, it just shows they're an incompetent organization. They can't even get tanking right. And it's a big difference between getting, even if they get the 3rd pick, they're not likely to get Fultz or Ball as well. So this is, it's driving Laker fans crazy, and rightfully so. These games don't mean anything. Look what Phoenix is doing. Sit everybody, get all the good players out of the way so you ensure that you lose. What a disaster. Although, again, tinfoil hat crowd thinks they'll keep the pick anyways. But now the odds say they will lose it. Bad for the books. Look at this. Toronto, Lowry back. They were down big. They were down 20 in this game. They come back to beat Detroit on the road, Teddy.
Yeah, and of course, Lowry returning the court is key. He had a wrist injury, not a leg injury or an ankle, so he was able to keep his conditioning in place. And boy, he didn't skip a beat. 27 points on 9 of 16 shooting, 9 assists, only 2 turnovers, and the Raptors rally from 20 down to win it. And of course, we got to throw this out there. Why plus minus can be such a screwy stat. Look at Dylan Wright's Tuesday, all right? Plays 20 minutes, 0 points, 2 rebounds. He walks off the court with a plus 20. That's nice. And when your team makes a big run, and you get the credit for it.
Also bad for the books. Orioles plus $1.10. Went off the favorite minus 115. They win 3-1 at home against Toronto. Dylan Bundy, razor sharp. 8 strikeouts, no walks, 4 hits over 8 innings. Britton shuts the door. Rocky ninth, though. We got his 50th straight save. 3 of the first 4 batters reached base, but he got the double play to end it. Most consecutive saves. Gagne, 84. Gordon, 54. And you see Britton up there cracking the top 5 as well. Also, heavy Marlins Nationals money on the over. Bet up to 8.5 with juice. 9s in many places. Got to 8 for the first 5 inning line. Straley got lit up, even though both bullpens pitched fairly well in that one. Up next, big game breakdown. We'll start with the Bucks and the Pacers, and then we'll get to the Mets. Harvey's back. They're at home against the Braves on Sportsbook. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on Sportsbook, Betting Insight today, Pauly and Teddy. Time for big game breakdown. As always, live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Big game tonight in the association. Only 7 days left in the regular season. Milwaukee hits the road to take on the Pacers. Indiana 4.5, 201 the total. It's 40-38 against 38-40. Look at the bottom of the East here. The 5, 6, 7, and 8 seed. One of the 5 won't make it. All seeds still open. Miami, Chicago, and Indiana all have the same record. Miami, it does have the tiebreaker over the Pacers. The Heat get the big win in Charlotte last night. The Bucks have owned the Pacers so far. November 3rd, they were +3 and won 125-107. February 11th, they were catching 6. They won by 16 at Indiana. And then they played a couple weeks ago. Milwaukee was laying 1. They won by 14. Kidd has done a nice job with this squad, Teddy.
Yeah, he sure has. And he's done a real good job against the Pacers. Again, go through those first 3 meetings this season. We're talking Milwaukee -1, +6, and +3 in those games, and they've won them all by 14 or more. It's been a matchup that has worked very, very well for Jason Kidd and company. And I like what Kidd did in Oklahoma City on Tuesday. You know, he could have gotten tight under the collar, but instead he did the smart thing. He just let the game go, and that's what you have to do as an NBA coach sometimes. The Bucks fell down by 24 in the second quarter versus the Thunder, and Kidd didn't chase. The starters played less than 114 out of 240 total floor minutes, which may give them a little bit of a freshness edge here, but it's not just all about freshness for Milwaukee. They have an issue right now at the point guard spot since Malcolm Brogdon got hurt.
And he's missed the last 3 games. The ugly overtime win against Detroit. Lost straight up as home chalk to Dallas, then buried at OKC. Not a star yet, but who plays point guard without Brogdon? Delly, Terry, Peyton Jr. might be the worst rotation in the NBA at that position. Here's the Greek freak. Quote, the most important thing is for us to get back to our flow and what we were doing before these last 2 games. We were playing hard defensively, and I believe our effort was really high before those 2 games, and our offense was a lot cleaner. That had a lot to do with Malcolm being out, who's one of our best playmakers, end quote. Now, the Pacers with a character win on Tuesday. They won 108-90 over Toronto at home. They entered the game on a 4-game losing streak. They just lost in double overtime at Cleveland, 135-130. Could have been the last straw because they're down 19 midway through the second. They didn't quit. They outscored them 82-45 the rest of the way. George had 35 and 10, and 4 others scored in double digits. Here's George. This was a must-win. I wouldn't say we could forget about the playoffs if we lost this one, but we could have dug ourselves in an even deeper hole and had to rely on teams beating Chicago, Miami, instead of us controlling how we've got to play this thing out, end quote. What do you think of the Pacers now, and if they're shorthanded in this one too?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Indiana's still a little bit shorthanded. I mean, Al Jefferson hasn't been an impact player for that team, but he's going to miss his 6th straight game. Glenn Robinson, at times this year, has given him a spark. He's going to miss his 8th straight game. This quote from Nate McMillan stands out to me, talking about how the Pacers are going to approach this final week of the season. Quote, "You have to go all out." And that's what we've been talking about, really, the last month when we had everybody healthy. There's no time to save yourself or to pace yourself. We can't worry about fatigue or even really think about that. So, sounds like balls to the wall for Indiana down the stretch. A team that saved their season for at least a day. But as we saw with Charlotte last night, saving your season short term isn't necessarily saving your season long term. I don't think that the Pacers are the better of these two teams.
We'll get back to this game coming up. It'll be a fun week, fun final week in the regular season. Let's go to baseball now. Live out, sportsbookreview.com. We roll on. Big game breakdown. Braves and Mets again. Mets $1.55, 7.5 the total. Garcia against Harvey. Wait a second. Harvey's on the mound and at home, and the Mets are only $1.55, and you see a total of 7.5. The markets don't trust him. And who is he in 2017? 2 years ago, on the verge of greatness, a 2-0 lead in the 9th against the Royals in the World Series in Game 5. 2016 fell off the table across the board, Teddy.
Yeah, and of course the issue last year, thoracic outlet syndrome. That's a nerve and blood vessel problem in the chest and shoulders. And when you see the decline, last year, and when you see this line, you nailed it. The Mets minus 155 at home against Atlanta with Harvey on the hill. The total 7.5 for an Atlanta team that isn't going to score runs easily against anybody. And a Mets team that isn't exactly tearing the cover off the ball. Clearly, the markets are saying Matt Harvey stinks right now. And boy, in spring training, he stunk. He had a 5.89 ERA over 5 starts, 18.1 innings, 16 strikeouts versus 3 walks, but he was hittable, allowed 23 hits and 3 home runs. He has velocity issues. Harvey, here's his quote, early in spring training. "I'm not looking to throw 100 miles an hour again, or in 97 even. My job is to get people out no matter what I'm throwing, and I'm looking forward to it. The velocity is going to be there or it's not, and I have to go out there and pitch." Then later in spring training, after he finally hit 96 on the radar gun, but wore down early, quote, "What happened in the 5th inning, I don't want to have happen during the regular season. Building up your arm strength there, it's kind of a stepping stone. Obviously, the first 3 steps didn't go as planned, but I felt this one was a step forward. Not making the 5th inning happen is just building up arm strength. We have 2 more starts down here, and then the regular season." So he had a bad spring, his arm strength's not there, and his velocity's down. These are most assuredly issues for Matt Harvey, and, Terry Collins is saying it too, Pauly.
Well, yeah, and he's not worried about velocity, he's just worried about command. Maybe they were better off putting him in AAA to start out with less pressure as well. Now you have Garcia, who was drafted by the Cardinals in 2005 and stayed in the organization ever since, 62-45, a 3.57 ERA over 147 starts and almost 900 innings. First game ever for another team. Fell off last season 10-13 with a ERA way up there, 4.67. Career high for losses and ERA, but the stuff wasn't that bad either, Teddy.
No, I mean, his xFIP was 3.77. He had 7.9 strikeouts per 9 innings. That was the second best of his career. His walk rate was decent, 3 walks per 9. And the ground ball rate was excellent, 56.7%. So he had 2 problems last year. He's a ground ball guy that wasn't backed by a good defense. The Cardinals number 22 in plate-adjusted defensive efficiency paid. We'll use that a lot as a defensive reference this season. And he had one other issue last year. When he missed high in the zone, he kept on getting tagged. You look at the home run to fly ball percentage of the 73 qualified pitchers, and there he is dead last in the majors. And home runs have been a problem for this guy. Well, not so much. Something of a one-season fluke. His career rate's 11.5%. That's just a tick above the MLB average. And the previous season, 2015, he was at 7.1. Plus, Citi Field, it's not a bad place to have a propensity to allow dingers. Not easy to hit home runs in that park. So Garcia, a guy whose advanced metrics stats say he's just fine, even though last year's mainstream stats showed something of a decline.
Not a big gamble either, a career gamble. It's his free agent walk season, so a good start could mean being traded to a contender or getting pay raised by somebody in 2018. What do you think? You got a lean on this one?
I know I don't want the Mets. When you see Harvey minus 155 at home against Atlanta, that's all you need to see. You don't want the Mets. The markets are telling you.
All right, part 2, deep dive, bullpens with Rob Veno. Then we get to the play of the day up next on Sportsbook. Betting Insight today on SPRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SPR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
It's deep dive time. Part 2 with Rob Veno, and this time, I promise I'm not going to delete it before you guys can watch it. I pulled a bonehead move earlier in the week. We had a 2-parter with Rob Veno, and I deleted part 2 of the interview. Not happening twice. Rob, thank you so much for taking time to do the same segment twice. Let's do it better the second time around.
You got it, buddy. No problem.
Of course, Rob, before we get going, why don't you tell people, A, why they should care about what you have to say, and B, where they can find you if they're interested in more of the things that you have to say.
Well, I think my feelings would be hurt if nobody cared what I said, so that would be a good starter. Been around, Teddy, doing baseball for a long, long time, since 1992, so a lot of experience in this, especially where bullpens and totals are concerned. So that's why we discuss these two things with you on this podcast at the start of the season. For my work, go ahead to sportsmemo.com. Daily selections right there. If you like more of a statistical-based website, go to robvenosports.com. You can get everything you need for your own handicapping each and every day right there, robvenosports.com.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Now, let's get into the meat of this. We talked bullpens in part 1 of the deep dive. You can go to the archives and check out that interview from Monday's show. Today, we're going to talk lineups. And the premise, of course, is that starting pitching by the beginning of May is basically priced correctly. You're not going to see a lot of overvalued or undervalued starters. Maybe 90% of the starters will be priced appropriately within a month of opening day. But bullpens and lineups are areas where the markets don't necessarily react strongly to. They'll react strongly to starting pitching, but when we're talking about where to find value, lineups is one way to do it. And there's one lineup, Rob, from a team that made the World Series last year that you want to talk about right from the get-go as being a legitimately elite lineup, way better than it was last year because of some guy named Brantley being back on the field.
Yeah, the team you speak of, Teddy, obviously the Cleveland Indians, losers to the Chicago Cubs in the World Series last year, but it's hard to think that they could find improvement, but they certainly have found more than just improvement. I think they found a double dose of improvement inside that lineup. Off season, they acquire Edwin Encarnacion, extreme power and run producing type bat for the middle of their lineup. And with that, of course, as you mentioned, Michael Brantley, who played, but I don't know, 14, 15 games last year for this team, arguably in 2015, the best position player in the Indians' everyday lineup. Michael Brantley back. Certainly he's going to ease into things a little bit, but his presence from the left-hand side makes a big difference in that lineup. And, of course, with Encarnacion, they just become a far more productive team. I would, argue that this is the best offense in Major League Baseball this season. To go with the pitching and the relief pitching that they have, it makes them quite the bundle to handle for anybody that's going to face them. But Cleveland, with Frankie Lindor and other guys, certainly a lineup that's going to be a lot to handle each and every night for opposing pitchers and bullpens.
Now, there were 3 teams that you wanted to highlight as being potential over teams. Teams that don't necessarily have the pitching, but may well have the lineups, and maybe underrated lineups. One of them is the LA Angels, a team obviously with Calhoun and Trout at the top of the order. What do you like about the Angels when it comes to their lineup?
Yeah, and I kind of would like to refer to them as a turnaround team where totals are concerned, Teddy, because this team last year against the total went 69, 83 with 10 pushes, 69 overs, 83 unders, 10 pushes. This is a team that, aside from Matt Shoemaker and Garrett Richards, you don't see an awful lot in their starting pitching. And those guys can be had at times as well. And the bullpen is just atrocious in my estimation. You've got a lineup that is very potent. And I just feel like this team is going to turn those numbers around. The 69 and 83 to me is more of an aberration than reality. The Angels, they're going to be priced higher. You know, we're going to see nines on this American League team. And that's always a difficult judgment to make when you're handicapping day to day, but I just feel like late innings of games can get away from this team as far as pitching is concerned, but they can also be productive innings for the Angels. So I'm going to use them as my turnaround team where totals are concerned, and I'm going to point them towards the over. Again, we're not saying go out and play the Anaheim Angels every single night over the total, but they should produce a winning record toward the over this season.
Rob, real quick, I want to talk about the two other teams that you highlighted as potential over squads. And one of them, you know, the Kansas City Royals, you know, with Moustakas back in the lineup, but a lot of free agency questions for KC. Yet you're looking at this Royals team as being more potent offensively than they've been in recent seasons.
And I also, you know, to combine that, Teddy, I'll say that they're on the downside where their bullpen is concerned. In years past, we could count on the Kansas City bullpen to shut down the late innings. But so many of these over-unders are decided in innings 7, 8, and 9. And with Kansas City, you just don't have that ability to shut down the opponent anymore. Their bullpen is a far cry from what it was 3 years ago. You're talking about two really reliable arms in Herrera, and I don't even know if I could call Joakim Soria a reliable arm anymore. It may be trending toward average status. So I think that Kansas City's lineup, which certainly underachieved last year and has a lot of the core pieces. Lorenzo Cain spent a lot of time injured last year. Moustakas obviously was injured. Alex Gordon had a subpar season. I think if those guys bounce back toward the mean, this team will find their way up and over more totals than unders. Last year, their record 75 over, 78 under, 9 pushes. I think this is more of an over team this time around.
And the Miami Marlins, a third team that you identified as being more potent offensively, perhaps in the betting markets, would indicate. Rob, we've got less than a minute left. I want to talk about the number one under team when it comes to a good pitching staff, good bullpen, bad lineup. You've got the New York Mets highlighted as a team that you don't want to be playing a whole lot of overs with.
Yeah, and the Mets are going to be lined, you know, toward the under, Teddy, so it's a difficult call, but I do think that the lineup is so old, and there's so many strikeout holes inside that lineup that I just don't trust that offense whatsoever. And then you combine that with the really, really strong starting pitching that they have and a pretty dependable bullpen. The pitchers go late into games, which helps the bullpen out. But I think that everyday lineup, just the age on it and their strikeout prowess, it just doesn't thrill me at all. So even if we're seeing 6s or 6.5s, I think the Mets can score 5-4 or 4 runs in a game and still remain under the total. I like the Mets to be an under team this year. Last year, with the good pitching and this lineup, they were 74 over, 86 under, 3 pushes. I think that stays the same.
Rob Veno from SportsmanWorld.com and Rob Veno Sports. Thank you so much for your time. Best of luck throughout this baseball season.
Always a pleasure, Teddy. Thanks for having me.
Excellent job, Mr. Veno. And that wraps up the two-parter on bullpens. Money time play of the day. Back to the Bucks and the Pacers. Betting number 705, 706. Let's go over 201. You saw two of the scores earlier meetings, 125, 107, and 116 to 100. Must win means nobody goes down without a fight. A lot of late scramble points as well. And it's not like these teams play great defense. Both teams can score, too. So I expect us to go over and definitely get to 201. That is our play of the day. Google Hangout every Thursday, 8 o'clock Pacific. Then we close strong on Friday with a big card. Masters. We also got the NBA with a big card on the weekend. And, of course, Major League Baseball on Sportsbook. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.